Good afternoon. I'm Pamela Vaill Carter, and I'm here today with one of my favorite osteopaths, Mark Wilson. Hello, Mark.
Hi.
Mark will be familiar to a lot of you as he just retired not too long ago as chair of the SCC Board of Trustees.
I call it Lord Supreme Commander. But
well, of course you were, and we all bow down to you. You had to wear those funny outfits too. Of course, I also knew you, Mark, because I got to know you when you were a consultant for the OCC. And Mark has also, along with Hilary Percival, been just instrumental in getting off the pediatric diploma off the ground, which we're all grateful to you, Mark, for your determination and your dedication and a lot of hard work. So Good to see you, Mark. And I thought people might want to get to know you a little bit more. And so I just had some questions. How did you choose osteopathy? How did you come to choose osteopathy as a career? And can you tell us a little bit where you went to school, when you got qualified, et cetera, et cetera?
So I qualified from the BSO in '89, the year of '89. So that's with lots of quite well-known guys, because we had quite a dynamic year in our college. We had Christian Sullivan, Coquin. Let's not names drop. Anyhow, but it was a good. I mean, people have their worries about the school that I went to, but I think it was good. But way before then. So how did I get into osteopathy? So my father was a GP. Always been interested in medicine. My grandfather was a bit of a rascal and a photographer, and had strong leanings towards rascalness, if that's a word, and photography. And I got into art. I went to art school for a bit, and then I decided I'm not going to carry on with art school per se, because I wanted to get into film. And at the end of doing a film degree, I'd have to come out and sweep the trim, so I might as well just go straight into studio work. So I got into studios, and I thought, actually, I'm not so keen on these people. They're a bit precious. And I was just chatting to my mum, and she used to go to an osteopath, and she mentioned, we were just talking, and she mentioned about someone else's kid maybe going to train to be an osteopath, and I didn't know anything about it, but I went, this sounds interesting. So I went to see my mum's osteopath, who happened to be Pamela Brown, who was one of the very, she was part of the very early cranial faculty in the UK. And she was just this most awesome, I just loved her. She died maybe a couple of years ago, and she is my osteopathic hero. I got a photograph of her in my office, and I just look at her and she inspires me. So anyhow, I didn't know anything about osteopathy. My mum just said the word, and something somehow clicked. And my father being a doctor, and so with this interest in medicine, but also the art, I started hanging out with Pam. I say hanging out because I'd just go there for a day, and I was just into motorbikes at the time. I was kind of a motorbike mechanic. So I had this idea of engineering, and she kind of just showed me the connection of the engineering with medicine, but it kind of combined it with art. So where I liked art, I used to do a lot of sculpturing as well. It just seemed like a natural fusion, osteopathy, of this art and medicine, which is where I was split between my father and my grandfather. So this kind of was a light bulb moment. I was like, this is awesome. So I had a mechanical brain, but no anatomical knowledge. And somehow I would sit with Pam for a day, and even though I didn't know anatomy, and she'd say, right, get your hand on the sacrum. I'm like, what's a sacrum? And she'd go, yeah. Now give me some fluid up to the head. And I'm thinking, what the hell is she talking about? She'd go, oh, stop there. That's it. I go, okay. And then she'd go, you let it go. And I was thinking, how did she know? I was thinking about my motorbike just then. And I had just let it go. So she knew exactly where I was. And she just got me feeling tissues like I never felt before. And we talked a bit about chiropractics and osteopathy. And at that time, the British School of Osteopathy was kind of like the flagship. It was where people wanted to go. So I enrolled for that. I went traveling in Africa for a year, came back and did my training there. And when I got there, I was completely dumbfounded that we were like articulating spines and pulling things around. And actually, I didn't know it, but well, I got to know it, but I didn't know before I went to go there, because I was thinking about going to the ESO because they were much more cranially tolerant at the time. BSO, it was taboo. You couldn't do cranial. In fact, Christian and I and a couple of others, we went and did a cranial sacral course because you just weren't allowed to do cranial. In fact, at that time, there wasn't an SCCO. It was just a postgraduate osteopathic course in osteopathy in the cranial field. And it was just a basic course. There was no pathway. You just did a course and you just kept doing it till you thought you got a hang of it, really. And but we were itching to know cranial work. And so we had to do cranial sacral because it's the only way we could do it as an undergraduate. And I remember getting caught in the clinic by actually one of the cranial postgrad faculty. And she dobbed me in. I had to go and sit outside the principal's office. I was waiting, and it was right by the clinic. So everyone knew I was in trouble and I was going to get told off. And I was told off for using cranial in the clinic. But the reason they actually caught me out was because it worked. This patient got better. They hadn't been responding to all the clunking and the clicking. So I did some cranial because I was thinking, well, I need to do something else here. And they go, oh, this patient's better. But what's going on? How did that happen? So they're looking and go, oh, he's been doing cranial. He's not allowed to do that. So that just got my juices going a bit more because not anti-establishment, but, there's a bit of, I said earlier, my grandfather's a bit of a rascal, and I guess it's kind of in there a little bit. Yeah, a bit naughty. So
I think a little.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Just enjoying life. And that's also part of osteopathy, isn't it? You're enjoying life. It's when you get that expression of life, and that's what you get when you're treating. Because again, so going more into developing osteopathy and what got my juices going, I promised I would never be just a cranial osteopath. I would always be quite happy to use all the other tools in my armory that I've been taught.
Yeah, me too.
And there are times when I might do some HVT work or some soft tissue work. I love doing that. I love working with bodies. I said I used to be into sculpting. So it's that kind of tactile, hands-on feeling. So it's that real marrying up. But it just works so much. It just seemed to, for me, because it is a relationship, obviously, that you build up with your patients. And I just seemed to build a better therapeutic relationship and something that worked with the cranial somehow. So it was that whole kind of marrying up of this joy of life and feeling things. And then, because you can be very bony in your cranial work. You can learn your patterns and stuff, and that's all good. You need to know that too. And there's a big debate with things like biodynamics and as fluffy as you think your cranial is going to go, you still need your anatomy. 100%, I do believe that. But you've got to be able to feel it. So some people, maybe they just like working on that kind of very bony model. And then some people might be very fluidy, and some people are out over the horizon of Dancing with Angels. For me, it's feeling those tissues and feeling that the way they're moving, the way they're trying to express that life, and you're kind of joining in with that and becoming empathetic with it, maybe more than empathetic. So, it's not even you and the tissues anymore. You're in this dance together, and without getting too crazy hippie, but you're engaging in a way where it's so non-invasive, but you've still got your center. You're still engaging with the tissues and still giving it a fulcrum to adjust from. Because you can get too, I'm just in it and I'm just feeling how they're moving and I'm in the fluids and it's all lovely and I can feel the potency and the vitality. But are you actually giving them a treatment? Maybe. So we could debate this for another day. So I'm never just sitting there following and just, it's a real interaction, but but you gotta feel those tissues. You gotta be a part of those tissues to engage them, to allow them to actually to do something, to shift. Because I remember working with quite an eminent osteopath, and I was treating him once, and then he said to me, "Mark, you've developed your own style." And he never quite told me what it was, but I think it was just this kind of, and it's not my own style, I'm sure most people do it, but I think it maybe upset this person because he liked his way of working. So
that leads me to a really good segue, Mark, because what I was going to ask you, and you don't have to name that osteopath, but other than Pamela Brown, is there any other osteopaths that have influenced you that you, or even other influences, doesn't have to be osteopathic, that have influenced you in this journey? It was a great discussion about osteopathy.
Loads of influences. I mean, pretty much the whole faculty at the SCCO has influenced me. I mean, just in absolute admiration. I guess the people that maybe have helped given me real guides. I spent a lot of time with the Osteopathic Centre for Children, so I worked a lot with Stuart Korth, and I did also a lot of the biodynamics with Jim Jealous. So we might disagree on certain aspects, Jim, Stuart, and myself. I mean, I remember upsetting a couple of them. Well, there are only two of them, so that is a couple. But on occasions when I would challenge what they were doing, what they were saying. But it's healthy to be challenged. You have to be thinking. When you get to those kind of levels, both of them do have a kind of following. So it's nice to just give them a little poke every now and again and keep them on track. And but they work quite similar but very different. But they're both very because they're both working with potency and vitality, but in different ways. So, like Stuart, probably it's not the time to be talking about it, and he might disagree if he sees this, but he's really good at getting potency shifts right there and then. It's like that crack in the whip, that energy at the end. It's like that point of an HVT, but within a cranial treatment. And Jim will be, well, it's just a biodynamic model. But you see, and these are great models, whichever way you look at it. But when people try and emulate their heroes, they sometimes, I think, lose track of, or it's their interpretation. And in the end, osteopathy is what you make of it. It is a personal thing. But sometimes when you get into these kind of hero worships and you interpret things in a way and it gets passed down in that way, sometimes those messages get lost. But a lot of admiration for them. And they were, you asked me who my big influences were. So Pam Brown from the beginning, and Jim and Stuart definitely throughout. As I say, had my differences, but they were very strong influences. And just working in a strong faculty has just been awesome, really, because you've got that support, and it, without sounding too corny, I mean, it is really nurturing, and it gives you that space to actually think, and the safety to think about what you are actually feeling and challenging what you're feeling, and trying to make sense of it. And yeah, does that?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Mark, that was great. It was a great discussion, and I could listen to you for at least another 10 minutes, if not for another hour. But I think that's all we have time for. But thank you so much. It was a great sort of, it was great to hear your journey. So thank you so much for talking. Great to be on this journey with you. Thank you, Mark. Hang in there.
Bye.